We are Smooth Jazz Notes here at the 24th Jazztrax Festival on Catalina Island with Chuck Loeb. Is this your first visit to Catalina Island?
No, actually. I played here before. I played here with my own band, and I know exactly when it was, too, because it was a very interesting gig for me. It was just after 9/11 happened, so it was 2001. As you can imagine, an amazing time in the world, really, in America and in the world. And my experience here was very special because it was so recent, the thing that 9/11 happened. When we were coming from the hotel in Los Angeles here, I was carrying my guitar effects with me in my suitcase, and I left them in the hotel. And I didn't realize it until I was halfway here on the boat, so there was no going back. So I borrowed some guitar effects from another band. A very nice guy playing guitar in another band loaned to me. And I had decided to play the Star Spangled Banner with this special effect that I used. And since I was using somebody else's pedals to do it, I was very focused looking down at the pedals and playing it. And about halfway through, and it was a solo piece, halfway through I noticed that there was no sound in the audience. Almost sounded like everybody had left. And I looked up, and everyone in the room had stood up on their feet, and they were all like, sort of paying attention, you know, standing at attention, listening to the Star Spangled Banner, because everybody felt so, you know, united at that, just so recently after 9/11. And even the door to the kitchen in the back, I noticed the folks in the kitchen had stopped working, and they were all just kind of standing there. So it was a really special memory. I told Art Good about it, and really stands out in my memory.
Well, so you have recently received a conference call from Bob James, Nathan East, and Harvey Mason. Please tell us about this.
Well, Sonny Abelardo, the manager for Fourplay, had called me a couple of weeks earlier to ask me about a specific time period, about my availability. And apparently there was a conflict with Larry, and I wasn't sure if he was going to be able to make a couple of shows. And then a couple of weeks, and unfortunately I was not available. So I thought, well, that's a shame. I would like to play with the band. And then a few weeks later, he called me back and he said, the guys would like to have a conference call with you. And I thought, what could that mean? And it did turn out that Larry had decided to move on to another thing, and the guys had decided to keep going, and they wanted me to join the band. And it took me, a nanosecond or two to decide. You know, I kind of had an inkling of what might be the subject of conversation on this conference call. And jumped in, and within about just 3 or 4 months, we were in making our new CD, Let's Touch the Sky, and doing shows, and it's just been a fun ride, great ride.
Well, your predecessors were, as you mentioned, Larry Carlton and Lee Ritenour.
Right.
Big shoes to fill.
Yes, absolutely. You know, and I felt, and still feel a certain amount of pressure and responsibility at filling those shoes, because they're both such iconic guitarists and great players, and great producers and musicians in general. But Bob James, Nathan East, and Harvey Mason, the other members of the band, from the very first conversation, that one where they asked me if I wanted to join the band, they immediately said, we're not asking you to come in to try to imitate Lee or Larry. We want you to be yourself. In fact, they had told Larry the same thing when he replaced Lee. Just be yourself, just, you know, and come in, and we will adapt to your style to make Fourplay inclusive of your style. And in theory, that sounded great, and in practice, it has been true. They've really wanted me to be myself, and they've made me feel extremely comfortable filling those shoes.
Well, you have just finished your first CD with Fourplay. Can you tell us about the CD and your experience playing with these world-class musicians?
Yeah, there's a few surprises, and there's a few things that you might expect. The surprise has been how unbelievably democratic a process it is. Every person plays exactly, I mean, you could mathematically almost figure it out, really a 25% role in making decisions. Of course, if we're recording a song by Bob James, Bob will have more input. If his piece is being recorded or performed live, he might have a little bit, but in general, in a global sense, it really is a four-way partnership. And so that was a nice surprise.
Have you produced this new CD?
We produced it together.
And what do you hope to bring to Fourplay?
Well, hopefully continued success, and I mean that not only in the sense of selling CDs and doing great shows, but success artistically. Fourplay, I've been a fan of Fourplay since the beginning. So, to me, continuing the legacy of the bar that they've set in terms of production, composition, performance, playing, the whole thing, the whole package, it's a legacy that I hope to be able to continue. And I know the guys have told me it's 20 years. In 2011, it'll be 20 years. And Bob has said, he's the oldest member of the band, that he wants to keep going for another 20. So that's my hope.
So what do you hope to get from your association with Fourplay?
Well, already it's really enriched my career and my musical life. You know, it already has. I was very good friends with Bob before, and now I've become even closer. Even though I knew Harvey and Nathan before, I've become much closer, working together so much. So it's already enriched my life in a lot of ways. And what I hope is to be able to extrapolate their sense of adventure and playfulness and creativity into a really long-range process. And the name of the new CD is Let's Touch the Sky. And that's kind of the feeling that the band has. They want to like really strive for excellence and really strive for pushing the envelope a little bit, which I think when people hear this new CD, they'll get that sense.
Well, we understand that you were a self-taught guitarist when you started playing in a band at the age of 13. How were you introduced to music
I was very lucky to grow up in a time, I consider myself lucky to grow up in a time when there was an explosion of music. I was in the mid-60s when, you know, Beatles and the Stones and Jimi Hendrix and Bob Dylan, Stevie Wonder, the Four Tops, and Motown sound, that whole thing happened during my early musical development. So what a great time. And so I was inspired by some of that music and those bands to play music. And then guitar happened because my sister there was also a lot of folk music that she liked, Joan Baez, Judy Collins, people like that, Joni Mitchell. And so she asked my parents for a guitar, and they bought it for her, but then she kind of lost interest, and the guitar was always there, so I commandeered it. And then the interesting thing is that I started when I was about 10 and a half, 11 years old, and by the time I was 12, I mysteriously somehow decided that that's all I wanted to do for the rest of my life. I don't know how I made that decision at 12 years old, but I did, and it's a blessing because what a great life. I've just had a great time doing it.
Well, do you play any other instruments?
Yeah, I play some keyboards, I play bass, I play a little bit of harmonica, and that's about it. And I don't sing. Unless you want it to rain. I can make it rain.
Have you been formally trained?
Yes, I did go to the Berklee College of Music up in Boston. I did study with some great teachers. I studied with Dennis Sandoli and Jim Hall. So I did have formal training. I was self-taught for the first 3.5, 4 years, and then after that, once I started playing jazz, I realized this is going to be hard to learn on my own. So I got some great help.
How did you gravitate into smooth jazz?
Well, because I grew up in the 60s, my compositions, when I write music, tend to be R&B, rock, pop based more. But as a guitarist, I was really influenced by a lot of the great jazz guys. My guitar playing is more jazzy. My composition is more pop, rock, Latin, influence. So the combination of those two styles really is smooth jazz. So it was a natural when it started coming together, and the genre took off, I fell into it very naturally.